And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It is another exciting edition of the Weekly Pitch. Matt Price with you, coming from my home in Rockland County, New York. Well, leagues are starting to get back on track, or at least they're trying to get back on track. The NHL just introduced its 24-team playoff format. Everyone's hyped up for that. Also, the NBA pushing for a start or a restart date of July 31st. The NFL, obviously, they're not starting until, or at least we hope that they won't start until around fall. But one sport that everyone's talking about right now is Major League Baseball. When will that league get back on track? And the question is, will it get back up and running? Obviously, both the owners and the players have been going at it throughout the past couple weeks, and it has just gone downhill from there. So with that, we're going to talk about it. I want to introduce my panel for this week. We've got Mike Memis, Gabby Hurlbut, and first-time panelist Steve Durr. Steve, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thank you for having me on. This is really just a tremendous honor. I've always appreciated your show. Your show is right after mine on VIC Radio during the spring semester. So it's nice being able to advertise your show, and I can't wait to talk about some baseball.
Absolutely. Speaking of baseball, Steve was also a part of VIC's New York Take a Walk, a great baseball talk show that came before the Weekly Pitch. And now Steve, first time ever, he is a part of the Weekly Pitch. Gabby, Mike, how are you?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Yeah, things have been good.
Mike?
All's well in this crazy time, just comparatively, but always small gripes. But I also had fun with the online class I'm taking, which has been good.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, now you can take a break from online learning and take a walk with this baseball-themed Weekly Pitch. Yeah, see, I knew Steve would like that. So let's get things started. Basically, nothing has gone right in negotiations between the MLB players and the owners. And obviously a major development that really broke lately and actually is going to happen going into this week, which is MLB teams releasing between 30 and 50 minor league players. And that, I'm not talking about 30 and 50 minor leaguers overall. I'm talking between 30 and 50 minor leaguers per team. It is not looking good at all, especially with everything that's been going on since the coronavirus pandemic began. Steve, I'll start with you. As someone who has a really good baseball mind, like, what goes through your mind when you just hear that kind of development, knowing that players' careers are ending early, you could pretty much say, or at the risk of ending early, and you have these negotiations that are just not going well at the major league level?
Well, Matt, I was lucky enough to have a family friend who was a part of the minor league baseball process. He was my dad's high school friend. This was a long time ago. It was with the Texas Rangers, so he was a pitcher. He knew Nolan Ryan, had lunch and stuff with them, so it was kind of cool with that. And really, it's just an unfortunate situation to unravel. You have people who are drafted maybe in the second, third rounds who were, have good potential, but just need to take a couple more strides before getting there, getting released. And at the end of the day, keeping an entire organization together is very hard during these times when no revenue is coming in. You know how many minor league baseball teams are. There's AAA, AA, single A, low A, rookie ball. There's just so many types of minor league baseball that are in each organization. So I can see why it's hard to keep all of them. 30 and 50 is a high number. I think the number might be a little too high. But I wasn't surprised at first when I saw a few players getting unfortunately cut because of these situations going on.
So let me shift over to you, Gabby. I mean, you're someone who's followed teams for a while, especially your Boston Red Sox. And Yeah, I can see your fist up in the air for that. But obviously, we can't raise any fists right now other than fists in protest because, everyone wants baseball back. Us four want baseball back. But the thing is, both sides just can't come to an agreement. And obviously, you had the comments made by Blake Snell. You had Bryce Harper in support of those comments. You had Max Scherzer just this past week make comments regarding how the two sides are just not agreeing with one another right now. In fact, Scott Boras talked today to the media, and according to ESPN, he recommended that his clients, and I'm reading here from the article, refuse Major League Baseball's attempt to cut salaries during negotiations with the players' union, claiming team financial issues caused by the coronavirus pandemic have their origin in management debt financing. He's basically telling his clients and the rest of the MLB players, do not give in to the owners. When you hear those comments and when you hear about the other comments by Snell and Harper and Scherzer and any other players out there, do you believe they all have a point?
I do definitely think in a way that they have a point. I think that I can understand the frustration and what they're feeling about everything because, to be honest, like this whole situation has been a big question mark for everybody involved. Nobody knows for sure exactly how this whole thing was going to unfold with the coronavirus. And when the season was supposed to start, nobody knew if this was going to get worse or if we were going to be at a steady point where they could safely start baseball. So I understand why the players kind of feel the way that they do, but at the same time, baseball, you have people like me that love baseball that are going to go back to it regardless, but it's going to lose a lot of its younger fan base, I do believe, if it doesn't come back, especially because in terms of other major sports, there are other leagues that kind of get more attention than baseball, that kind of have more overall interest than it does. So I think that they need to keep that in mind as well, that like the players, it's like their salaries are kind of already big enough at this point where like I think that if they can take a salary cut, they should really be more flexible. And I think it should be more about being able to play baseball and just get some games out there for people like the fans who really want to see baseball and like are really looking forward to having a season. It's like, it's going to be a shortened season as it is anyway. So I kind of am leaning more towards, I think that they really need to kind of be more flexible in terms of what they're saying about this, just because we're in an unprecedented time right now. And the fact that baseball is already a big question mark if there's even going to be a season. If there isn't a season, I think there's going to be a lot of aftermath after that the league's going to have to make up for, that I think a lot of people aren't really taking into consideration here. And so I think that, in a way they do have a point and they don't want to play if their salaries aren't going to be as high. But at the same time, it's like, if you would be playing a shortened season as it is, like why not help generate the revenue for the sport as it is? Because we know that baseball just isn't as popular as like football or basketball that could be able to get away with something like that, maybe more, and not have a season and still be able to kind of like maintain next year their same level of interest and revenue. So I think that the players need to kind of put a little bit of that into perspective and think about the future of baseball and what could be affected if they don't reach an agreement and there isn't a season. Because I think that next year and years going forward, they're going to end up having to make up a lot of ground if there's no season this year.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on that. And Mike, this is for you. You think about how the NBA they were the first professional sports league to stop everything, stop all operations when this whole thing began, literally, I guess you could say in this case back in March. And then the NHL followed suit. Then it came to the other leagues, and then the MLB was one of the last ones to stop everything. But now you have the NHL, now you have the NBA starting to at least try to get back on track. And you're not hearing anything from players from those leagues. You're not hearing from anyone complaining about any salary cuts or any loss of revenue on their end. Why is there such a distinction between those leagues, the NBA and the NHL and the MLB? Like why is there such a big difference here? Like what's the problem here?
Well, first of all, you have to keep in mind NBA and NHL, they completed most of their season. They completed about over 2/3 of their season. So you got most of your pay. at least in the NBA's case, they were already expecting that free agents were going to get as much. Not a great free agent class anyway, besides AD, but it was already going to be, the cap wasn't going to be raised as much because of the fact of what happened with China and China not showing the games. That's a huge TV deal for the NBA. In terms of why the MLB players are complaining about it is because they haven't started a season. The MLB, proposed doing half a season. They already agreed to getting paid half the amount. So in hindsight, that looks like pretty fair, right? You play half the games, you get paid half as much. Obviously, there are no fans. There are going to be no fans, and the owners think they should, the players should take some of that loss as well. However, they did sign a contract. The contract unless the contract states, due to an act of God, you have to take this, or they have some clause, which they don't. NBA has that. It's both. It's just a he said, she said, and eventually they'll agree. But right now the owners, I think, know that either there's going to not be a season, or they're going to have to concede more than they initially thought they were going to have to, and get it probably closer to the original March deal, which is why they're cutting employees, or they're furloughing them, or they're cutting the amount they're paying them, and they're trying to do these drive-in movie things at a lot of the stadiums, and not paying minor leaguers, which I'm sure we'll get more to that later because I do have a lot of opinions on that. But the reason they're complaining is because you're getting paid less, especially for people going into like a free agency. They're already going to be making less in free agency this year because we know the owners are going to probably they're not either getting much less or they're going to lose money. So they're not going to be wanting to play players a lot in free agency, such as Mookie Betts, who's going to be a free agent and is supposed to just get a huge deal, and now he's probably not going to get paid that much, or he may take 1-year deals until the owners start paying paying higher for free agents. So it's a bad situation all around MLB. It's unfortunate for MLB, but that's, I think, the real reason the MLB players are complaining is just it's so much more than what the NBA and NHL is losing, because NBA and NHL also NHL's having extra playoff games, so that's going to make up some of the revenue. NBA may have extra playoff games, which make up some revenue, and plus they have done a few events to gain more popularity for the league. I think all the money went to charity, but in the end, MLB's it's losing so much more than those other two leagues.
I'll tell you what, I personally have watched baseball since a combination of late 2005 and late 2006, and I never thought I'd say this in all my years of watching a sport, and baseball will forever personally be my favorite sport, but this league right now, what we are witnessing, has become the laughing stock of the sports world from what I've seen. Because in my mind, what players should understand, and look, I get where they're coming from, especially those players who have those small multi-million-dollar contracts. Like you could have a couple players who may be playing for 1 or 2 years for $8 or $16 million, while you have other players like Garrett Cole. He just signed that big deal with the Yankees for $300 million. He was supposed to earn $36 million this year. Now it's likely he could only get maybe $18 million or something like that. Who knows? But what players in my mind, need to understand, and Steve, this is for you, is that right now, put money aside. And I say that for the owners as well. Put money aside. Because what's more important? Is it about making money or, playing the game that you grew up loving and played your entire career? Because from what I'm seeing right now, it's like that's all off the table. No, the only way I'm going to swing a bat is if I get my cut. Like, do you think that's the message the players are sending here? Because if that's the message, then in my mind, shame on them.
Well, I guess that's part of the reason, Matt, but here's the big issue. There is a pandemic going on, and it's also
Right.
about player safety. That's part of the reason. They want to make sure they're getting their money because of them being at risk. They're going to be traveling still regionally. But, for example, with the proposal, it's East, Central, and West. So American League East, they'll be basically playing the American League East, but when they're not playing the American League East, they're playing the National League East. Look who's in the National League East. You saw the Yankees, hypothetically, even though they still have to go all the way down to Tampa, they'd also have to go down to Miami. They'd also go down to Atlanta. That's far traveling when it comes to this pandemic. There's a chance, with someone being asymptomatic, that they bring the virus down there. Another player gets it. You just don't know. And that's a big issue with this whole money thing because, yes, they love the game. all baseball players in the MLB love the game, but at the same time, they know that there's also a little health risk there. There is a little health risk there. And there's also one thing to add on as well. This is going to be a unique baseball season. And I want to counterpoint for the owners here. The reason why they're offering what they did was that this is going to be an unusual situation, that their regular season, the bulk of their regular season, where in an 82 baseball regular season, every game really matters. You really can't go on one of those 5-game, 6-game losing streaks without making it up with a 10-game winning streak in order to get into the playoffs. One thing to note is that the NHL playoffs is likely going to be going on during this. The NBA playoffs is going to be going on during this. And all of the viewership is probably going to be switched onto those games compared onto this Major League Baseball regular season, which is what I assume the owners are proposing. And that's something I think the players have to realize. Not necessarily take that huge pay cut that the owners offered again, but maybe try to find some middle ground there, because realistically, Major League Baseball is going to struggle immensely making money this year. Immensely, because of their regular season being involved with NHL playoffs and NBA playoffs. That's two big things right there. And by the time they get to the postseason, they saw the NFL beginning its season. So some days are going to be tough days for them as well.
Mike, I was going to just get to you, Mike, because you were shaking your head before Steve answered that.
Yeah, sorry. NBA's on ESPN also. So, they have some games on ABC, but be interesting to see how when they get to the playoffs for the NBA, because they're showing more multiple games a day on NBA and TNT, how they're going to balance that with the fact that they also have rights to MLB baseball games because they have it multiple days a week, and how they're going to balance it out. Also balance out the programming to kind of hype both up, because you have different shows for each. And, MLB is obviously a big thing, they paid a lot for, but also, NBA playoffs are more important than regular season. So that's also going to be an interesting thing to balance.
I think we're going to see a lot of day games. And the reason why is because playoffs can be sent for prime time. Yes, we don't know what the NHL is going to look like, considering they're all going to play in one arena, looks like, per conference. So that could be very interesting with the timing there for the NHL. But I'm expecting a lot of day games for the MLB because of potential viewership loss. And also, a small thing here, the electric bill. The lights in the stadiums, they might not – no fans are to come in to the stadiums, obviously, because many states are not allowing fans to come into the stadiums. I know Texas, I believe, approved that just recently, to have 25% capacity.
Yeah, 25%. That's actually really something. Texas is going to have is offering 25% capacity, while you have other states right now that are not going to have any fans at all. Like that is very unequal.
I think we see a league rule happen. I think league rules are going to stop that. I think the Major League, what they should do at least, is Major League Baseball should come down and say no fans allowed at all. And even if Texas has those rules that 25% of fans can come in, that MLB will shut that down. So, but like I said, I think a lot of day games, save the electric bill, get some more viewership than anticipated. It's just going to be interesting to see how everything unfolds, especially if the Major League Baseball gets a deal done.
Gabby, I want to read to you something that Boris also wrote in his letter to his client. So here's the quote. Remember, games cannot be played without you. Players should not agree to further pay cuts to bail out the owners. Let owners take some of their record revenues and profits from the past several years and pay you the prorated salaries you agreed to accept, or let them borrow against the asset values they created from the use of those profits players generated. So he is right about one thing. Games cannot be played without the players.
Right.
I mean, who else is going to play? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be Steve? Is it going to be you? Is it going to be Mike? Is it going to be anybody? Like, who's going to play? Not to mention that the owners had to release all these minor leaguers this week and this coming week as well. So when you see or hear the words, players should not bail out the owners, when you hear that, do you feel like this is the owners doing that? The owners are, all they care about right now is generating the revenue and making money. Do you think it's the players' fault where they're saying, we want our full cut we don't want this big cut. We want our full salary? Or are both sides at fault here? Because, I'm hearing one argument, then I hear a second argument, I read this letter, and now I don't know what to think. Please help us get a good understanding about this.
Right, yeah. And I mean, so there have definitely been a lot of people that are taking very, very definite sides on this, and a lot of different analysts, our own analysts even at ESPN, that disagree on this topic a lot. So first of all, the first thing that I kind of want to say that it kind of goes off of what everybody said before is if they don't reach a decision soon, I really don't think that there is going to be a season. And by soon, I mean really soon, because based on the whole plan that they've drawn out, they need to logistically get players to their locations and start actually getting back into it. They can't just jump right back into games. They need to kind of have some sort of, since there was this big hiatus and pause from in the middle of spring training, they need to have at least some sort of way to get back into it. And so I don't know if I can really confidently say that I see a season even happening. First of all, is kind of what I want to say first, because I think that decision needs to be made soon, and it doesn't seem like anybody really wants to budge on where their stance is right now. So that's the first thing. But in terms of your question, I don't necessarily think I can confidently place blame on either side here, and that's because in terms of the player's perspective, it's yeah, they don't want to risk their health and then not be getting paid their full salary and then play an 82-game season, and then God forbid somebody on the team gets hurt or gets sick, and then spreads the virus to the whole team, and then the whole team staff, that then becomes a liability issue for the program itself. Not just even that's not even just about the player's health at that point. That just becomes a liability issue, and then that would again look back on the league and look bad on them on Major League Baseball and being well, this should have been handled better. Maybe there should have been more appropriate testing in place, or something would come out of it that would reflect badly on the league and make them look bad. And I don't think that the players are even taking that part of it into consideration at all. I think they are kind of about, we just want our money or we're not going to play. And I think with the owners, it's they are on the completely opposite side of that, and they're not really thinking about the health risks as much that come with playing. And I think that for them, it's more about we just need to generate revenue somehow, and we need to save money. So we're just not in order to be able to even have a season without having the revenue of the fans in stadiums, which already is going to hurt them more than it hurts other sports. It is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of people that are just set on their stance here, and it's hard to really place blame on one side or the other in particular, because I think that both sides have things that they need to consider here that they're not considering when they say, oh, it needs to be this way, or we need to do this, or with the players, we're not going to play if we're not going to get paid. It's there's a lot of frustration with everybody that's involved in the organization, and that starts with the owners and the players and everybody that's involved with every organization in baseball. And you can't really say that it's necessarily on one side or the other. And the whole thing about the players not wanting to bail out the owners, that's a very questionable statement, I think, because it's not necessarily about bailing out the owners by not getting paid. It's more about kind of the health risks associated with that. And if they're not getting paid their full salary and then they get sick, then what were they really even playing for? Is it really worth that? But at the same time, I do understand where the owners are coming from, because if they still pay every player their full salary, but they're not making their regular revenue because they hadn't even started a season yet, it's difficult. It's a really difficult line to cross, I think. But I think that everybody needs to realize that there's a lot more involved here than what they specifically are saying. And I really don't see any of the players budging on this either, nor do I see any of the organizations budging on the situation. So ultimately, at the end of the day, maybe it is better to not have a season at this point, because it just seems if they do have a season, somebody's going to be disappointed within every organization, and it's going to affect somebody negatively, regardless of if that's the players or the MLB or individual teams. And so ultimately, is it more of a long-term risk for them to have a shortened season with potentially pay cuts, or have a shortened season where they're paying the players in full, or just not have a season. And I'm starting to lean more on the not having a season, because then nobody's going to get sick, develop the virus. And that the whole salary thing won't be an issue, and you don't risk players kind of wanting to bail out at that point afterwards. So I guess what the question now is that a more reasonable approach to the situation? And is it worth trying to compete with like NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, and then with the NFL, if they start on time, and college football and all these other sports that are starting up at that point, which people's attention immediately turns away from baseball, usually overall, once those types of sports are happening. And that's not even when the NBA and NHL are even conflicting with baseball or with NFL. Like, usually when those sports are over, it's like a small period of time when it's just baseball, and sure, people are watching that to watch their sports, but then once the NFL season starts, it's a whole different situation. And so is it worth trying to go through all of this trouble and have everybody disagreeing, or should they just at this point just try to figure out a way to just not have a season, and then just make sure everybody's safe, and then try to focus on the future rather than right now?
Can I just say something? Can we just give Gabby a round of applause for that? Because that was, I think, 5 of the greatest minutes of explanation I think we've ever had in the history of this show. I mean, that was fantastic. That was great analysis. It's
like, is it really worth that risk at this point, though?
Right.
And I as much as I love baseball, and as much as I already have gone through many, many withdrawals of not having a baseball season, as I would be if it were football or anything else, but particularly baseball because it's my favorite sport, I just don't know if it's in the MLB's best interest right now to try to have a season.
Right. And what's funny about this, well, I don't know if it's funny, but the irony in all this is, and I want to piggyback on some of Gabby's points, because I thought she made some good ones there, and that whole explanation was, for one thing, and I heard this just the other day on the Michael Kay show, or Michael Kay said that Major League Baseball itself is an $11 to $12 billion business. And even though the league is going to lose a lot of revenue, they're already losing a lot of revenue right now with releasing the minor leaguers and not having anything so far. They haven't had any activity since the middle of March. And not to mention that there are some minor leaguers that are going to be stopped getting paid by the end of the month. And in addition, they're starting to furlough employees that are off the field. So, but the thing is about the MLB, when it comes to the MLB, this is a league that does bounce back, that can bounce back, and I think will bounce back. But there was another point that Gabby made, and Steven, you can piggyback on this if you want, if you wish, I mean, is that when it came to, because Gabby, you work at ESPN, and some of ESPN's analysts and commentators like Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman. Now, these were on 2 separate shows. But even though I understand when it came to the Blake Snell comments and Bryce Harper agreeing with him, that even if, yes, it is about health and safety, you want to make sure you have the money so you and your families are well taken care of. I get all that. I do. But you have Stephen A. Smith saying to guys like Blake Snell and Bryce Harper, shut the hell up, while you have Max Kellerman, who's siding with the players and basically blasted the MLB owner's latest proposal. I just saw his argument just the other day, and it was some argument. Now, look, Stephen A. Smith wasn't a part of the show, but you've got 2 different. It's like a political debate. You've got 2 separate sides of the aisle here, and you just don't know who's right and who's wrong, or if they're both right or if they're both wrong. Like, what is this?
Here's something that's really important to note off of what Gabby was saying before.
Yeah.
Players I know are training. That's something to really note. I know they want to start spring training June 10th. I've read a lot of players are going to be training still. And that's something that's important. I know that many teams are allowed to report the facilities, so teams still may go to facilities even though negotiations are still going on, which is something to point out. But here's something really important about what Scott Boras said. He's an agent.
Yes. One of the most respected agents in the entire league, if not the entire sports world.
Yeah, but I'm not necessarily going that route. I'm going down that road. I'm going down the road that he wants his money. And Trevor Bauer was not happy about his comments, I believe. He said something right here. It says, hearing a lot of rumors about certain player agent meddling in MLBPA affairs. If true, and at this point, these are only rumors. I have one thing to say. Scott Boras, rep your clients however you want, but keep your damn personal agenda out of the union business. And he's completely right.
Yeah,
Because
I can agree with that.
Scott Boras is jumping into this. I think he's just not even doing this out of the players. He's not doing this out of the fans. He's doing
this
out of
all the time.
Right, because remember, they're when the agents
wants his money.
Yeah, agents have to make their money somehow. They get 10% of the players' salaries.
It works.
He's still getting a lot of money. Think how many clients Scott Boras has. He will still be making millions and millions of dollars. He is technically kind of like one of those owners in these situations. So, except he's on his own path. He's on his own branch. There's the owners, there's the players, and then there's agents like Scott Boras who kind of makes as much money as the owners, depending on who they have as clients. And at the end of the day, they are the ones that are realistically going to be winning either way. And I think he's just being greedy for a little more money. For just a little more money. I think he should stay out of this because I think he's just being selfish. He's just being pure selfish with those comments.
Mike, I apologize for talking over you there. You want to say a point. I also, if you can also add another point, the MLBPA was also seeking to play more games, like over 100 games, maybe 110 games, rather than half the season, between 80 and 99 games or something like that. So say what you want to say, because I'm sorry again for talking over you.
No.
And if you can also talk about the other point that I just made.
It's all good. No, in terms of the MLBPA wanting to play more games, it's a possible counter proposal. There's also been talk to them kind of delaying the getting paid less until future years, so that they still get paid their 50% this year, and then in future years they may get a little less, which they're already going to get a little less anyway because teams are going to pay less, obviously. But it leaves in a difficult spot. The problem is, though, the CBA is expiring at the end of the next year. So, honestly, in retrospect, they kind of should have just ripped up the CBA. I don't think they can legally do it. Should have just ripped the CBA and created a new one, because of the fact that this is going to set so much precedent into the next negotiations. That's what the big problem is. You also have the fact that MLB teams are they take advantage of a lot of things. They take advantage of, at the draft, they're doing 5 rounds, so you're screwing over the college players who are seniors and need to get drafted this year. They can't decide, I want to stay for another year, or I want to stay till junior year. You have to get drafted. So they're even if they get undrafted, they're allowed unlimited, but you're getting paid less in signing bonus. Minor league players are not getting paid by some teams. Oakland A's, they decide not to pay their minor league guys for the rest of the season. They are still part of the team, so they can't even file for unemployment to get some money, because that almost as much as money as the minor league players are making.
Which is astounding. That's very astounding.
Both ways, yeah. And players are having to pay their money. Players are paying minor league players, which is turning the PR against the owners, because usually the league wins public relations battles against the players because they have all these tools. But I probably didn't go off what you were asking, but it's crazy, and I get why the MLB players are skeptical, because of the fact that the owners have done this to everyone. They haven't done it as much to the players, but they've used analytics to keep not giving these big contracts, and waiting till way at the end of the free agency period to sign players. Using analytics to try to pay players in arbitration less. Using some rules to make sure that minor leaguers they come in like 18 games into the season, so they get one more year of service time, one more year of arbitration or whatever, that you control them. So the players are skeptical. The owners are. They obviously don't want to lose money, and it's a lot of ground to make up in between, and it's hopefully I think they will end up with agreement, because last time they missed can't the season, it was not good for the MLB. It was it got saved luckily, but it was not good for the MLB, and that's just really all my thoughts on it.
It's definitely a mind-boggling situation. And by the way, one more thing I want to add is, some players definitely have thoughts on this. We heard it from players like Snell and Harper. We heard it from Max Scherzer recently. Question is, how many other players out there agree with them and how many, don't care. They just want the season. At least they want to give the fans what they wanted. That's just, just a little something to get their minds off this whole health crisis that we're all in right now. It's unbelievable. So I guess I'll wrap up with this and I'll go.
Well, the 10th is right around the corner. So,
yeah,
nobody's still budging. So, if they want to make a decision by that day, I'm not sure if I really see that happening. So it'll be interesting to see if they can reach an agreement by then.
And with that, with just a few seconds to go, very quickly, one-word answers. Mike Memis, first to you, yes or no, will we have a 2020 MLB season?
Yes.
Gabby Hurlbut, yes or no, will we have a 2020 MLB season?
I think yes, eventually.
Steve Durr, big Yankees guy, do you see a 2020 MLB season happening, or do you think, screw it, we're just going to have to go right into 2021?
100%. So 2 words.
All right. And I all I can say right now, based on stuff that's going on, I think there will be an MLB season. I'm hopeful for an MLB season, but right now we just don't know with the way negotiations are going on. But we will see what happens, and when anything else pops up, we here at the Weekly Pitch will talk about it. That's going to wrap things up. Special thanks to Mike Memis, Gabby Hurlbut, and Steve Durr for joining me this week. Join us next week. Same pitch time, same pitch place. This is Matt Price, signing off.